Poland.
And, why is it quietly becoming Europe's next superpower?
Just because they're Polish,
Yeah, that's the reason. And also we're going to figure out more reasons in this video that
Why
we're watching
would we? I
right
just told you the answer.
Actually, I think just because they have a city named Gdansk.
Gdansk. We went to Gdansk on our vlog channel. If you want to check out that vlog, we'll try to link that video for you right down there in the top comments, and the channel link is in the top of the description. We also traveled to a bunch of countries in Asia if you want to check out videos of us traveling for reals.
Oh yeah, and we did a Geography Now reaction to Poland on this channel if you just want to check that out. And also please let us know more things we can react to about Poland, on Poland, what to do in Poland, in the comments as well.
Let's check this out. Why is Poland becoming that superpower?
Because they're Polish.
All right, let's go.
This is the classic stereotype of Poland. A gray, poor, post-communist country with
Pigs in a trunk.
But cheap, unqualified labor. But this stereotype is no longer true. And Poland of today looks more like this. In the past 30 years,
Fancy.
Poland went through an incredible transformation, growing more than any other economy in Europe, and faster than Asian tigers like Singapore, South Korea, or Taiwan.
Wow, really?
Poland is emerging as a major technological hub. The Polish economy might overtake the UK by 2030, and
Really?
after years of suffering from a massive brain drain, highly skilled Poles are now coming back home. And it goes way beyond the economy, as Poland is building one of the most powerful militaries in Europe, and quickly becoming one of the most influential European countries. As all of these changes continue to pick up pace, it's getting impossible to ignore Poland's growing importance. But there's...
Stop ignoring Poland.
Yeah, come on, they're powerful now.
Yeah, they got good food. They're growing. I'm surprised they're growing faster than even like South Korea and Taiwan and Singapore.
'Cause you hear about those are the countries you hear about because they show it all over the news, like the insane economic growth there.
People are just sleeping on this quiet European super. People don't really you don't really hear about like the growing European powers. Really.
I mean, we were literally when we went to Gdansk, we didn't think much of it. We were just like, oh, it'll probably just be a cool city, and we're like, oh wow, this is what it looks like. Interesting. And that's just Gdansk.
Poland shocked us, you could say.
Still one thing that could destroy the entire Polish miracle. A threat not from the outside, but from within. So how did Poland manage to become Europe's biggest success story? Why is it doing so much better?
It's quite a
than
roundabout, my
everyone
gosh.
else?
Oh my
And
gosh.
what is the challenge threatening to end everything that it has achieved? This is the rise of Poland. But first, a word from the...
If you want to support this guy, a link is in the description to his video.
You can buy some books on Blinkist or whatever the heck that is.
Transformation is such a big deal, we need to understand where it started from. In the 20th century, after becoming the first country to be invaded by Nazi Germany and losing 20% of its population in World War II, Poland became part of the Eastern Bloc as one of the Soviet-controlled satellite states. Like in the rest of the Eastern Bloc, the 40 years of communism were times of deep economic isolation, stagnation, and overall hopelessness. Poland had to import the Soviet system of centrally planned economy, where state owned almost everything. Private businesses were mostly non-existent, and since they were basically a Soviet colony, the Polish economy was subservient to interests of the Soviet Union, and forced to make, buy, and sell whatever Moscow wanted it to, whether it made economic sense or not. As a result, the centrally planned economy was deeply dysfunctional and mismanaged, crippled by constant shortages of basic goods and lack of resources. When the communist regimes of Eastern Europe finally fell in 1989 and Poland became free and independent, it emerged from behind the Iron Curtain as one of the poorest countries in Europe, with highly dysfunctional infrastructure and public services, and with basically no experience with capitalism and participating in a global economy. The average salary was 10 times lower than in Germany, and the country was struggling with hyperinflation.
But they did have
the SIGs.
The SIG shops in the back of somebody's trunk.
You know, you always gotta get SIGs.
In other words, it wasn't a country you would bet on to become a major success. But skip 30 years ahead into the future, and that's exactly what happened. So, how
Don't sleep on Poland.
Hey, you wanna see how if a country's growing? They got like 5 cranes in the background. That's how you know a country's growing.
Whenever we go to a new city and we see a bunch of cranes, we're like, oh snap, stuff is going down.
What happened? Poland do it? From 1992, Poland managed to grow consecutively for almost 3 decades, achieving
good.
the longest period of growth in modern European history. Now, not many countries are able to do that, and the reason is that usually when they find a successful strategy, they tend to stick to it long after it stops working. But Poland, so far, managed to find a different growth strategy for each of the 3 decades, which allowed it to grow so fast for so long. Starting in the early 1990s, its main challenge, like in every other post-communist country, was how to transition from a centralized, state-owned economy to a capitalist one. In most countries, these transitional reforms were in one way or another quite problematic. Either they took too long, or they became pretty corrupt, and much of the state wealth was transferred into hands of a few wealthy oligarchs who got rich because of their political connections.
Not good.
Poland, on the other hand, managed this transition arguably better than others. It transitioned to capitalism quickly.
We've only been to Gdansk, so when I see this, I'm like, is that Gdansk? But the other cities might look like that too, so we don't know.
We just remember the colorful facades of the buildings like that.
Yeah.
But privatized most of the state-owned companies slowly, and a few years later than most of its neighbors, after the chaos calmed down, and after it became a little bit harder to steal everything. Thanks to that, it became pretty much the only post-communist country without an economy dominated by oligarchs, and without an economic crash in the 1990s. But despite the good start in the early 2000s, this wasn't enough anymore in order to grow, and so the next phase was about globalization. In 2004, Poland joined the European Union and the open European market with a free movement of goods and services. Without any barriers between Poland and the rest of Europe, it made sense for Western European companies to move their manufacturing over to Poland, where they had a large and a very cheap pool of workers at their disposal.
Okay.
And while these companies kept most of the profit, Poland got enough out of it to keep growing at a pretty fast pace. And joining the EU brought another major benefit, since one of its key principles is redistribution of money from wealthier member states to the less developed ones, in order to balance the wealth disparity across the Union. After joining, the Eastern European states started to receive a lot of money, and Poland managed to use them to build and improve everything from roads to universities. And again, in a lot more efficient way than in many other Eastern European countries.
Now you would hope that Poland would return this favor when other poorer countries join the EU, and they'd be like, oh, they helped us, now we will help you.
They could also give them some flavors too if they want.
They could give them some of those yummy Polish flavors.
But yeah, you would assume based off their investment in their own infrastructure that in the future they would do that as well.
Hopefully. Countries sometimes.
You never know.
Like, thank you. And then they'll be like,
you never know.
But that can still only take you as far. And many countries following a similar trajectory eventually fall into the so-called middle-income trap. If your economy is based on providing cheap labor for foreign companies, you can only grow to a certain level. And if you can't offer anything else apart from that, and you don't have any major companies of your own, you're stuck. But so far, Poland seems to be avoiding that. 15 years ago, foreign companies were coming in to hire low-skilled and low-paid workers for menial labor. But today, they're coming because Poland has one of the largest pools of engineering talent in Europe. And instead of warehouses and basic factories, companies like Google are opening research and development hubs. Now, that said, Poland is still relatively poor, at least compared with most of Western Europe. But the growth so far has been impressive and unusually inclusive. Average wages in the country massively increased, while inequality remained low. And so it's not a growth that would only exist on...
Cannot say the same for the US of A.
No. I mean, if you were to show that same graph that they just showed for the US, it would be very different.
Yeah.
Increased, while inequality remained low. And so it's not a growth that would only exist on paper, or only help select few, but it actually trickled down to the rest of the society. And there's one more area outside of economic growth where Poland has been getting a lot of attention lately, and that's its unprecedented military buildup. Historically, Poland has some good reasons to be a little paranoid. Stuck between Germany and Russia, it has been invaded, partitioned, colonized, and stripped of its independence time and time again. And even though today it's in NATO, this historical memory is still there. And while most European countries were taking their peace dividends, Poland has kept military funding at one of the highest levels in NATO. And
Wow.
after
Oh,
the
wow.
Russian invasion of Ukraine, it went into an overdrive. It announced that in just a few years, it will increase its military spending to 5% of its GDP,
Highest in
higher
NATO?
than any other NATO
Wow.
member, double the size of its armed forces to 300,000, and buy thousands of tanks, fighter jets, and other military equipment. And before the end of the decade, Poland plans to have the most powerful ground forces in Europe, in what would be one
Wow.
of the most ambitious military buildups in modern European history. Now, that being said, what Poland has achieved so far is impressive, and what it plans to achieve even more so. But it's yet to be seen if all that will actually happen. Despite its successes, there are some significant risks that could kill the entire Polish miracle. And not
Look at
everyone,
this
there are
building.
some significant risks
Whoa,
that
what
could
the
kill
heck?
the entire Polish miracle.
That's very
And not
unique.
everyone is so bullish on Poland's future. For a long time, demography has been considered the #1 threat, as around 500,000 people have left the country in the last 30 years.
Oh,
But
yeah.
now it looks like Poland managed to reverse this trend. In recent years, it has seen a reverse brain drain, as Poles and people with Polish heritage living abroad have started coming back to the country. And since the country took in over 1.5 million Ukrainian refugees, the demographic
Wow,
trends are
that's a
looking much
lot.
better. And so there are really two major risks. First, while the growth has been impressive, Poland has not actually avoided the middle-income trap completely. So far, it's still massively reliant on foreign investments, and although tech centers are being opened in Warsaw, they are set up by foreign companies, rather than by Polish ones. And while that brings jobs and growth, once again, there is a limit to how high you can grow, since most of the profits will always end up leaving the country in the end. In order to break into the big leagues, you need your own domestic giants in sectors with high added value. And Poland doesn't have that. Or at least, not yet.
Not
but
yet.
the far bigger risk is of a completely different nature, and it concerns a part of the Polish story that we haven't touched on yet. The thing is that Poland is a deeply, deeply divided country. So much that we can almost talk about two different Polands. One liberal and progressive, and the other deeply conservative and religious. Like in the US, the two Polands are finding it increasingly difficult to coexist
That's
together,
very
and
interesting.
surveys show that
That is very US-like.
Yes.
The US is, my gosh, I mean, you can't even, like, associate with people sometimes if you have differing political views because that's all people care about.
People are very, very adamant about certain things like that.
Yeah.
So
It's interesting. It's
can
interesting.
definitely create issues within a country.
Yeah, you can definitely relate to that, Poland.
both sides are highly suspicious of each other, intolerant to opposing views, and increasingly refusing to compromise. And for years, the current conservative government has been criticized by the liberal opposition for supposedly bending the rules in order to stay in power. And it has had a growing beef with the European Union that's threatening to cut Poland off from EU funds as a punishment for not upholding the rule of law. And the thing is that whatever side you cheer for, the end result is bad for both, and for Poland in general. The country needs both parts of the population to coexist and work together, and it needs the EU if it wants to be truly successful. And if it doesn't manage to do that, the Polish miracle will be over soon, before it has really started.
So moral of the story, let's just all be friends.
Why can't we be friends? That's the thing. It's just that the divisions, they really keep countries from moving forward. I mean, the U.S. is just stuck. I think.
Just the division creates this sense of sort of like complacency, just like of just kind of just doing the same thing
Back
over and
forth,
over.
back and forth,
Yeah, it's-
back and forth.
So there's no progression, just no going anywhere because it's just back and forth.
One president does something, the next party comes in, reverses everything that one did, back and forth, back and forth. Nothing goes forward. And then you have people who forget where like things came from. Like I'm assuming there are some anti-EU people in Poland that may forget that the EU is what helped them
Yes,
to that point.
yes.
And I'm sure some of you will be in the comments.
Yeah, who knows what type of controversy this can stir up in the comments, what type of division this can. But, you know, we just gotta all be friends. Why can't we?
Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed another Poland reaction. If you did, make sure to subscribe. Let us know what other stuff to check out in the comments. See you in the next one. Bye.